I just want to start off by saying if you want to answer the end, prepare to be disappointed. There just isn't one. I was an intern in Nickelodeon Studios for a year in 2005 for a degree in animation. It wasn't paid, of course. Most internships aren't. But it does have some perks beyond education. To adults, it may not seem like a big one, but most kids at the time will go crazy over it. Now, since I worked directly with editors and animators, I got to view new episodes days before they aired. I'll get right to it without giving too many unnecessary details. They had very recently made the SpongeBob movie, and the entire staff was somewhat sapped of creativity, so it took longer to start up the season, but the delay lasted longer for more than upsetting reasons. There was a problem with Series 4 premiere that set everyone and everything back for several months. Me and two other interns were in the editing room along with the lead animators and sound editors for the final cut. We received a copy that was supposed to be fear of a crowd party and gathered around the screen to watch. Now, given that isn't found yet, animators often put up a mock title card, sort of an inside joke for us, with phony, oftentimes lewd titles such as How Sex Doesn't Work instead of Rockabye Bealv. When SpongeBob and Patrick adopt the sea scallop, nothing particularly funny but work-related chuckles. So when we saw the title Squidwards Suicide, we didn't think of it more than a morbid joke. One of the interns did a small throat laugh at it. The happy-go-lucky music played as normal. The story began with Squidward practicing his clarinet, hitting a few sour notes like normal. We hear SpongeBob laughing outside and Squidward stops, yelling at him to keep it down as he has a concert that night and he needs to practice. SpongeBob says okay, and goes to see Sandy with Patrick. The bubble splash screen comes up and we see the ending of Squidward's concert. This is when things began to seem off. While playing, a few frames repeated themselves, but the sound doesn't. At this point, sound is synced up with the animation, so yeah, that's not common. But when he stops playing, the sound finishes as his skip never happened. There is a slight murmuring in the crowd before they could begin to boo him. Not normal cartoon booing, that is common in the show, but you could very clearly hear malice in it. Squidward's in full frame looks visibly afraid. The shot goes through the crowd with SpongeBob in center frame, and he is too booing. Very much unlike him. That isn't the oddest thing though. What is it odd is everyone has hyper-realistic eyes. Very detailed. Clear not shots of real people's eyes, but something a bit more real than CGI. The pupils were red. Some of us looked at each other, obviously confused, but since we weren't the writers, we didn't question its appeal to children yet. The shot goes to Squidward sitting on the edge of his bed, looking very forlorn. The view of his portal window is that of a night sky, so it isn't very long after the concert. The unsettling part is the point there is no sound. Literally, no sound. Not even the feedback from speakers in the room. It is after the speakers were turned off, so the status showed that they were working perfectly. He just sat there, blinking, in this silence for about 30 seconds. Then he started to sob softly. He put his hands, tentacles, over his eyes and began to cry quietly for a full minute or more. All the while a sound in the background very slowly growing from nothing to barely audible. It sounded like a slight breeze through a forest. The screen slowly begins to zoom in on his face. By slow, I mean it's only notice it if you look at shots 10 seconds apart, side by side. His sobbing gets louder, more full of hurt and anger. The screen then twitches a bit, as if it twitches in on itself for a split second then back to normal. The wind through the trees, sounds get slower and louder, and more severe, as if a storm was brewing somewhere. The eerie part is this sound, and Squidward's sobbing sounded real. As if the sound wasn't coming from speakers, but if the speakers were holes, the sound was coming through from the other side. As good as sound audio studios like this have, they don't purchase the equipment to be that good to produce sound of that pure quality. Below the sound of wind and sobbing, very faint, something sounded like laughing. It came at all intervals, never lasted more than a second, so he had a hard time pinning it. We watched this twice, so pardon me if things sound too specific, but I've had time to think about them. After 30 seconds left, the screen blurred and twitched violently, and something flashed over the screen, as if a single frame was replaced. The lead animation editor paused and rewound frame by frame. What we saw was horrible. It was a still photo of a dead child. He couldn't have been more than 6. His face was mangled and bloody, one of his eyes dangling from his unburnt face popped. He was naked down to his underwear, his stomach crudely cut open and his entrails laying beside him. He was lying on some pavement that was probably a road. The most upsetting part was that the shadow of the photographer. There was no crime tape, no evidence tags or markers, and the angle was completely off a shot designed to be evidence. It seems the photographer was the person responsible for the child's death. We were, of course, mortified, but pressed on, hoping that it was just a sick joke. The screen flicked back to Squidward, still sobbing louder than before, half body and frame. There was now what appeared to be blood running down from his eyes. The blood was also done in a hyper-realistic style, looking as if you touched it, you'd get blood on your fingers. The wind sounded now as if there was a gale blowing through the forest. There were even snapping sounds of branches, the laughing, a deep baritone lasting at longer intervals and coming more frequently after about 20 seconds. The screen again twisted and showed a single frame photo. The editor was reluctant to go back. We all were, but we knew we had to. This time the photo was that of her to be a little girl, no older than the first child. She was lying on her stomach. Her bra is in a pool of blood next to her. Her left eye was too popped out, and popped, naked except for underpants. Her entrails were piled on top of her, above her, another crude cut along her back. Again, the body was on the street, and the photographer's shadow was visible, very similar size and shape to the first one. I had to choke back vomit for more than one intern. The only female in the room ran out. The show resumed. About 5 seconds after this photo played, Squidward went silent, as did all sound. Like it was when the scene started, but his tentacles down, his eyes were now done in hyperrealism, like the other were in the beginning of the episode. There were bleeding, bloodshot and pulsating. He just stared at the screen as if he were watching the viewer. After about 10 seconds, he started sobbing, this time not covering his eyes. The sound was piercing and loud, and most fear-inducing of all, sobbing was the scream. Tears of blood were dripping down his face at a heavy rate. The sound of the wind sound came back, and so did the deep voiced laughing, and this time the still photo lasted for a good 5 frames. The animator was able to stop it on the 4th and backed up. This time the photo of a boy about the same age, but this time the scene was different. The inferior was just being pulled out of his stomach, one by a large hand. The right eye popped and dangling, blood trickling down it. The animator proceeded. It was hard to believe, but the next one was different, but he couldn't tell what. He went on to the next, same thing. He went back to the first and played it, then quicker, and I lost it. I vomited on the floor. The animated and sound editors gasping at the screen. The 5 frames were not as if there were 5 different photos. They were played as if the frames from a video. We saw the hand slowly lift out of the guts. We saw the kid's eyes focus on it. We even saw 2 frames of the kid beginning to blink. The lead sound editor told us to stop. He had to call in the creator to see this. Mr. Hillingberg arrived within about 15 minutes. He was confused why did we call him down here, so the editor just continued the episode. Once a few frames were shown, all screaming and all sounds stopped. Squidward was just staring at the viewer. Full frame on his face for about 3 seconds. Shot. The shot quickly panned out, and the deep voice said, "Do it!" And we see Squidward's hands, a shotgun. He immediately puts the shotgun to his mouth and pulls the trigger. Realistic blood and brain matter splatters the wall behind him and his bed, and he flies back with force. The last 5 seconds of this episode show his body on the bed on one side, one eye dangling out of what's left of his head above the floor, staring blankly at it. Then the episode ends. Mr. Hellenberg is obviously angry about this. He demanded to know what the heck was going on. Most people left the room at this point, so it was just a handful of us to watch it again. Viewing this episode twice only served to imprint the entry of it in our minds and cause more horrible nightmares. I'm sorry I stayed. The only theory we could think of was the file was edited by someone in the chain from the drawing studio here. The CTO was called in to analyse it when it happened. The analysis of the file did not show it was edited over new material. However, the timestamp of there was a mere 24 seconds before we began viewing it. All equipment involved was examined for foreign software and hardware such as glitches, as if the timestamp may have glitched and showed the wrong time. But everything checked out fine. We don't know what happened to this day. Nobody does. Their investigation due to the nature of the photos, but nothing came of it. No crime scene was identified and no clues were gathered from the data involved, no physical clues in the photo. I never believed in unexplained phenomenon before. Now that something happened and can't prove anything beyond accidental evidence, I think twice about things. Do it.